Welcome to 6 Degrees of Wiki, a podcast where two sisters find the 6 degrees of separation between Wikipedia articles that don't seem to have anything in common. I'm Rosanna.
And I'm Nikki. Today we'll fall into a Wikipedia spiral where Rosanna has just 6 rounds to figure out how the first article could possibly be connected to the last, while learning all sorts of peculiar facts along the way. Let's get started. So far this month, we've gone from Greek fire to chocolate. Round 1. Today, we're spiraling from chocolate to the Library of Alexandria.
Excellent.
Chocolate is a typically sweet food preparation of roasted ground cacao seeds. That's incredibly delicious. And the Library of Alexandria was an ancient library in Egypt. It was one of the largest and most significant libraries of the ancient world. And everything from there is gone. Because it was destroyed. Rosanna, do you see anything in common between chocolate and the Library of Alexandria?
The only thing that connects them is that they have ancient origins.
Okay. I'll take it.
They're both old, yeah.
So let's talk about chocolate. It's often prepared in the form of a liquid. Sometimes, though, in a paste or a block. It's also used to flavor other foods. Our earliest evidence of chocolate consumption was 1900 BC. It was traced back to the Olmecs in Mexico, where they made chocolate beverages. The majority of Mesoamerican people made chocolate beverages, including the Aztec and Maya civilizations, which most people have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
So some history of chocolate in Latin America. The residues that have been found and the kind of vessels they've been found in indicate the initial use of cacao wasn't just as a beverage, but they also used the white pulp around the cacao beans to make an alcoholic drink.
Oh.
They used it as a source of fermentable sugars. One specific instance, there was a Mayan tomb in Rio Azul, and there were vessels, the Maya glyph for cacao on them, with a residue of chocolate drink, and it suggests that the Maya were drinking chocolate around 400 AD. They also grew cacao trees in their backyards.
Wow, that's convenient.
Yeah, so they were all about it. There were some slight differences in preparations between cultures. The Maya liked their chocolate warm, and the Aztecs drank it cold. They also seasoned it with a whole bunch of different stuff, including chili pepper, allspice, vanilla, and honey, which all sounds pretty good. So you've probably heard of Mexican chocolate. That's exactly where it came from. Interesting fact, the Maya and Aztecs associated cacao with human sacrifice.
Oh, no.
Chocolate drinks specifically, they associated with sacrificial human blood. It wasn't that they added human blood to it, just that it could look like it. Sometimes they would even add achiote, which made it turn red.
That's... okay.
Okay, fine. Interesting and disgusting fact. Round 2. Rosanna, what do you think the next degree is between chocolate and Library of Alexandria?
I'm seriously doubting that there is one. Because I don't know. I think I have to go with, since the Library of Alexandria was an ancient time and the Mayans and Aztecs are an ancient people, I feel like I should go with one of them.
Okay. Which one?
Let's go Mayan. My guess is the Mayans.
Okay. Your guess of the Mayans is correct.
Seriously?
The next degree is the Maya civilization. And I have for years been pronouncing it Mayan, like the Mayan people, but every reference I saw to it said Maya. Maya civilization.
Really? Oh.
So I'm going to go with that, even though it feels uncomfortable to not include the N on the end.
Yeah, I thought I wrote it with an N on it. I thought that's how you said it.
The Maya civilization was a Mesoamerican civilization developed by the Maya peoples. They were noted specifically for their hieroglyphic script that they used, which is the only known fully developed writing system of the pre-Columbian Americas. They were pretty advanced. Also well known for their art, architecture, mathematics, calendar, and astronomical system. They were very interested in astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
They had tons of buildings in all their cities dedicated just to the study of astronomy. So they developed in an area that encompasses southeastern Mexico, all of Guatemala and Belize, and the western portions of Honduras and El Salvador. A very large space.
Yeah.
The earliest villages came together just before 2000 BC. The first big Maya cities developed around 750 BC, and by 500 BC, these cities had just monumental architecture, including really big temples with elaborate stucco facades. An example is El Castillo, which is a massive pyramid. You've probably seen pictures of it. And that's in Chichen Itza in the north, which is the largest Maya city. And their pyramids, they have a square base. I believe they're called triad pyramids. They have one major structure, and then on two sides, they have very large buildings that kind of terraced up that face inward.
Oh.
A little bit of history about Maya civilization. Kind of sad. In 1511, a Spanish caravel was wrecked in the Caribbean, and there were about a dozen survivors that made it to the coast of the Yucatan. They were seized by a Maya lord. Most were sacrificed, because, as most of us know, the Maya practiced human sacrifice.
Yeah.
Two managed to escape. Over the next 180 years, Spain slowly but completely conquered the area and took over all Maya cities. There were a few remote villages that remained, but they completely conquered that civilization. Interesting fact, Mesoamerican cultures, including the Mayas, did not use the wheel.
What?
They were so advanced in so many ways, but they didn't have a wheel. Most of the transport was on foot or by canoe, but no wheels.
Oh, seems like that would have helped, especially with the pyramid.
It's weird to think that they had so many advancements, but not that.
Yeah, that is weird.
So, as I'm sure you're wondering I'm going to tell you about the Maya religion.
Okay.
They were polytheistic. They believed that the gods needed to be placated with ceremonial offerings and ritual practices, including human sacrifice.
Yeah, that just seems like a weird part of, here's our regular life. By the way, we're going to kill somebody today.
Yeah. Yep. They also practiced ancestor worship, which is one reason they buried their dead in their houses.
No!
So their spirits would protect them.
No.
Yep. Like under the floor. Mm-hmm.
That's some, Edgar Allan Poe stuff right there.
They had shamans that used hallucinogens. One example, they used water lilies, which I did not know this, but in high doses, water lilies are hallucinogenic.
I didn't know that either.
Human sacrifice. Here's the big reason for it. Blood was viewed as a potent source of nourishment for the gods. And so the sacrifice of a living creature was a really powerful blood offering. They would also do human sacrifice for dedication of new buildings.
Oh, no!
I know. Just break some champagne on a ship. Just don't kill anybody. Also to enthrone a new ruler.
Wow.
The most common form was heart extraction.
Oh.
So you're thinking Indiana Jones, that's exactly
what I was thinking, Nikki. You read my mind.
Round 3.
On that note, Rosanna, what do you think the next degree is?
Well, I mean, human sacrifice came up a lot, but I feel like you probably didn't pick the article that was human sacrifice. I'm tossing around...
You say that like it's a question to me. You know I'm not going to answer.
A hieroglyphic script, or astronomy,
okay,
or the Triad Pyramid. So, the Library of Alexandria had a lot of old texts. So, based on that, I think I'm going to guess the hieroglyphic script.
Your guess of hieroglyphic script is incorrect.
Okay.
But a good idea.
Thanks.
The next degree is Chichen Itza.
Oh, I didn't write that down. Please spell it.
That's okay. Chichen, and the second word, Itza. I looked up how to pronounce it, and I can't remember if I'm pronouncing it correctly or not.
Chichen Itza. It's almost spelled like chicken.
It is. It's very close.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we just call it Chichen Itza? Because that's way more fun.
Chicken pizza.
Chichen Itza is a large pre-Columbian city built by the Maya people in the Terminal Classic period. The archaeological site, which is accessible today, it's in the Yucatan state in Mexico. The site has lots of different architectural styles because there were lots of different people from different areas that influenced it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are reminiscent of styles seen in central Mexico and of the Puc and Chinese styles, which I'm likely pronouncing it correctly.
Probably.
Presence of these non-Maya styles in a Maya city are because of transcultural diffusion, which is the spread of cultural items across multiple cultures.
Oh.
Chichen Itza is one of the most visited archaeological sites in Mexico. It had over 2.6 million tourists last year. And I understand why, because a lot of it sounds really cool. I recommend going to the Wikipedia page just to look at the pictures. There are a ton of pictures there, and they're fascinating. There's so much sculpture left over. I'm going to tell you a few points, because I have a theory about Chichen Itza. I'll see if you like my theory as well.
Okay.
Chichen Itza was likely to have been one of the mythical great cities, or talents, which is referred to in later literature in Mesoamerica. There are 4 visible sinkholes that would have provided water. The most famous one is called the Sacred Well, or Well of Sacrifice. They did actually have human sacrifice into that well. They found human remains that had wounds on their bones that indicated human sacrifice. They also threw items in, like expensive things, gold and jade and things like that. There's also a hidden sinkhole under a statue of a snake deity that archaeologists haven't actually seen. I think they found it through maybe sonar or something. And the Maya name Chichen Itza means at the mouth of the well of the Itza. Itza could have a translation of enchanter or sorcerer or just water. So it could mean at the mouth of the well of the sorcerer. The article didn't mention this, but all this to me says that Chichen Itza had the Fountain of Youth. I mean, doesn't it seem obvious?
Yes.
There's a lot of evidence there. I don't know why they didn't mention it, because it seems pretty straightforward to me. Listeners, I want to know if you also think that this is where the Fountain of Youth is. Round 4. Rosanna?
Yes.
What do you think the next degree is?
I believe it could possibly be maybe...
You're really sure about this one, aren't you?
Transculture fusion?
Say that again?
Is it transculture fusion? I'm taking your laughter as a no.
Your guess of transculture fusion. I'm gonna give it to you.
What, really?
The next degree is transcultural diffusion. In your heart, it was right. So you can have that one.
Okay, I'm gonna make a small correction in my notes.
Oh my god. That was amazing. Transcultural diffusion is the spread of cultural items, including ideas, styles, religions, technologies, languages, between individuals, whether within a single culture or from one culture to another. Some examples include the spread of the war chariot and iron smelting in ancient times, and more modern, the use of automobiles and Western business suits in the 20th century. So, the diffusion can happen in a lot of different ways. Migrating populations can carry their culture with them. Ideas can be carried by transcultural visitors like merchants, explorers, soldiers, diplomats, even slaves. There are 3 distinct categories of cultural diffusion. So, indirect diffusion, when traits are passed from one culture through a middleman to another culture, without the first and the last being in direct contact. An example is, I love the example here, Mexican food in Canada, because there's a large territory, the United States, in between.
Right.
This is also a lot more common now with the internet.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
A less pleasant form of diffusion is forced diffusion. That's when one culture subjugates or conquers or enslaves another.
Right.
And forces its own customs on the conquered people.
So rude.
One example is the forced Christianization of indigenous peoples of the Americas by Spanish, French, English, and Portuguese. Everybody.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Yeah. Direct diffusion is when two cultures are really close to each other, so there's intermarriage, trade, warfare. An example is the United States and Canada. People living on the border of the two countries both play hockey and baseball. Hockey being a generally Canadian sport, baseball being an American sport. Interesting fact about cultural diffusion. There's one concept that's kind of classified as evolutionary diffusionism, and that is, quote, an idea whose time has come. And that's where you get a new cultural item that appears almost simultaneously and independently in several different, very widely separated places.
Oh.
After certain other cultural items have appeared. Like calculus by Newton and Leibniz.
Oh.
Or the inventions of the airplane and the electronic computer. After they have kind of the prerequisites for it.
It was just a matter of time that everybody was going to come up with it.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Feels very much like the game Civilization. Round 5. We're getting close to the end. What's the next degree between transcultural diffusion? Transculture fusion and the Library of Alexandria.
Okay. Thank you for making fun of me again.
That's why I'm here.
I actually only wrote one thing down while you were talking.
I hope it's the right thing.
So do I.
What is it? Did you include all the syllables in the words?
Probably not. I don't know. This is the one that made the most sense to me in relationship to a library.
Okay.
Languages.
Languages. That's a big one.
Is it a good one?
Your guess of languages is incorrect.
Okay.
And not even close.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I feel better or worse about that.
The next degree is War Chariot.
Oh, yeah. I thought about writing that one down, actually.
It's a pretty cool one. A war chariot, or just chariot, it's a type of carriage driven by a charioteer, which sounds like a dessert.
Sounds delicious.
Usually has horses that provide rapid motive power. They were used by armies as transport or often a mobile archery platform. Also used for hunting and often for racing. Eventually, it was just a conveniently fast way to travel for many ancient people. The structure of a chariot is it's an open two-wheeled conveyance drawn by 2 or more, usually up to 4 horses. They were hitched side by side. It was basically just a floor with a waist-high guard at the front and sides. There was one example, there's a cool picture of it, of a recreation of it on the Wikipedia page. They called it a war wagon, and it was pretty wide. It was something like 12 or 13 feet wide, and they had little triangles cut out, and they would have archers inside them to shoot arrows but be protected as they went across the front.
Sure.
Chariots first appeared in the 15th to 14th centuries BCE. Use of them peaked around 1300 BC, but they kept using them for a very long time. They had lost their military importance by the 1st century AD, but they still had a whole bunch of chariot races in places like Constantinople up until the 6th century. Interesting fact, like me, you probably usually picture ancient Greek or Romans in chariots.
Yeah.
Especially in war. In a lot of movies, you see them, throwing spears from their chariot in battles in Troy and things like that. They didn't actually use them in war in Greece and Rome because there was so much rocky terrain.
Oh.
They pretty much were just used for games and processions, and the Romans, I think, never used them in war. They were just for fancy processions and for chariot racing in arenas. Round 6. Last guess, Rosanna. What is the degree between War Chariot and Library of Alexandria?
I don't know. Is it Greece?
Your guess of Greece is incorrect. But, to use your word, locationally, you're on the right track.
Excellent!
The next degree is Constantinople.
Oh! Dang it, I almost guessed that, too.
Constantinople, so to be clear, we're speaking about the historical city from 330 to 1453. Before it was Constantinople, it was called Byzantium. And now, after 1453, it's Istanbul.
Right.
It became Istanbul when it fell to the Ottoman Turks. It's the capital city, well, it was the capital city of the Roman Byzantine Empire, later the capital of the Ottoman Empire. It was founded by, who would have thought, Roman Emperor Constantine I. And it was built on the site of an already existing city, Byzantium. But, to be fair, he didn't just move somewhere and change the name. He actually built a ton of fortifications. And it is the gateway between two continents, Europe and Asia, and two seas, the Mediterranean and Black Sea. For most of its existence, Constantinople was the largest and wealthiest city in Europe. It's very influential. It was instrumental in the advancement of Christianity. They held Christendom's holiest relics, like the crown of thorns and the true cross. It was most famous for its massive and complex defenses, which kept it safe for 900 years until they got gunpowder in the area. It was taken in 1204 by the Crusader armies from the Fourth Crusade, and that was a really, really ugly aftermath. A very famous University of Constantinople was there, founded in the 5th century. It had a ton of artistic and literary treasures until it was sacked in 1204 by the Crusaders. Mm-hmm. And again in 1453. They had this massive imperial library in the university. It had over 100,000 volumes of ancient texts, also contained what was left of the Library of Alexandria. But it's all gone now because they completely destroyed it.
Boo.
Interesting fact about Constantinople. The Vikings were so pragmatic that medieval Vikings called it Miklegorar, which just means big city. That was their name for this specific city. When the city fell to the Ottoman Turks, thousands of Greek and Latin manuscripts were brought by refugees to Italy. And that played a key part in stimulating the Renaissance.
Oh.
So it makes you wonder if the Renaissance would have happened, or it would have happened when it did.
Yeah.
If the Ottomans hadn't taken Constantinople. And that takes us to the Library of Alexandria. It was called the Royal Library of Alexandria, or Ancient Library of Alexandria. It was in, surprise, Alexandria, Egypt.
What?
Who would have thought?
Not me.
It was one of the largest and most significant libraries of the ancient world. It was dedicated to the Muses, the 9 goddesses of the arts. It was constructed in the 3rd century BCE, and around until the Roman conquest of Egypt in 30 BC. And it had works, lecture halls, meeting rooms, and gardens, really similar to a modern university. Alexandria was considered the capital of knowledge and learning, mostly because of the library. They kept most of the books as papyrus scrolls, which explained the burning of them.
Well, yeah. Paper tends to burn pretty quick.
It really does. We don't know how many scrolls were housed at a given time. Estimates range from as low as 40,000 to 400,000.
Even 40,000's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
We don't know how much we lost.
Oh, that's so sad.
The library is most famous for having burned down. That's its claim to fame, besides being amazing. But its destruction has become the symbol for the loss of cultural knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows how much was there? Because the Egyptians were figuring out all sorts of math and astronomy information. They could have had a lot more knowledge than we realize. But it turns out it probably wasn't just a single fire that killed it. There were several fires over many years, most likely.
Oh.
And also at least one earthquake that damaged the city and the library at one point.
Okay, so were these fires like people falling asleep with their candle lit, or was it arson?
So most of it was probably arson.
That's horrible.
The sources differ on who was responsible and when it actually occurred. Some potential occasions for the partial or complete destruction of the library include a fire set by the army of Julius Caesar in 48 BC.
Boo.
Thanks, Caesar. Interesting fact about the Library of Alexandria. It was indirectly causal to the creation of writing on parchment instead of papyrus.
Oh.
Here's why. Most papyrus was produced in Alexandria. And because the library used so much of it, they hardly exported any of it. So other places had to find an alternate source of copy material.
Oh.
So they invented parchment. We've made it through all 6 degrees. We went from chocolate to the Maya civilization, to Chichen Itza, to transcultural diffusion, to War Chariot, to Constantinople, to the Library of Alexandria. Rosanna, what do you think of the spiral?
Well, I feel
you
like...
did really well in the beginning.
Yeah, I feel like I started strong. I got kind of really more interested in the chicken pizza section. And then I got all turned around with the transculture fusion. But I really like hearing about the real ancient history where it's so obviously affected all the time that came after it. I just think that's fascinating.
It's amazing how influential that stuff is. It seems so distant from us, but I mean, there's so many direct effects. It's time for Cheek of the Week. We're splitting our cheek in half again this week. We have a review and a show recommendation. Our new review is from Jody from the Bloom Saloon podcast, which is a Judy Bloom podcast. Interesting, 5 stars. Love the idea. What a fun way to learn random facts. One of my favorite hobbies. Keep it up, y'all.
Oh, that's
Thank
nice.
you, Jody.
So our recommendation is for a show on Netflix that apparently is called The Great British Baking Show, but I call it The Great British Bake Off because that's what they call it in England.
It depends on what country you're in, because I think there was a trademark issue with the name, so they had to change it for Netflix, because it's originally on BBC.
So if you're searching for it in the United States on Netflix, you're going to look for The Great British Baking Show. So the show is, it's kind of like a reality competition cooking show, but it's not at all like any American competition show there is. It is so much better.
It's so nice.
They start with, 12 bakers?
I think so.
And every week they have a signature challenge, a technical challenge, and then a showstopper. They have great hosts and then a couple of really knowledgeable judges. And everybody is so nice to everybody else.
They really are.
It feels good to watch it. I love it so much.
I don't generally watch any cooking shows, even though I like to cook, or reality shows, but I love this show. I'm only into the part of the first season, and it's just so good. I read somewhere that apparently the 2 hosts, when people get really upset if they lose or don't do well, they go up to them, and when they're hugging them, they start saying bad words, so the producers can't use that.
Oh.
So it's this wholesome, unwholesome moment.
So if you like cooking shows, and if you like reality shows, you'll probably like it. And if you don't like cooking shows and you don't like reality shows, you're still probably going to like it.
Yeah, it's so good.
So we recommend The Great British Bake Off / The Great British Baking Show if you're looking for something new to marathon on Netflix.
That's our episode. Tune in next time for another 6 Degrees of Wiki. You can keep up with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6 Degrees of Wiki.
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can support the show by leaving a review, buying 6 Degrees of Wiki merch like t-shirts, mugs, and bags, or even by donating directly to the show at 6degreesofwiki.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.